into the world of kids. Now, you're stepping into a world that's very, very different than the one that the big people hang out in. And so, in order to be able to give you an opportunity to walk in another person's shoes, we're going to be inviting you to get into step with kids. But let me give you just a couple of pieces that you can pay attention to. And of course, it's very, very important because we might be talking about a test, but don't get scared. It's all right. You'll be just fine. Okay. Let's go ahead and start with the very first piece as we begin getting into the world of working with kids, which is a fantastic place to do any kind of work that's going to make a real difference in the world, because when you're working with children, you're working with the future. Happy spring, everybody. Happy spring. Put your arms up in the air. Shake it loose. Shake it loose. All the possibilities of new life, new beauty are starting to awaken. Yay! Woo! Kids don't sit still. So you shouldn't sit still either. So feel free to do whatever you like on your side and just have a little opportunity to get into that experience of spring. Yay! So, an invitation. You're invited to a kids hypnosis session. You all know I'm Kat Wilson, and it's interesting when a name comes across, you might instantly have a vision of maybe a cat. Meow. And sometimes it's good to have little stuffed animals that can be present so that whoever you're working with has an opportunity to have something in their lap at the same time. So if you happen to have your inner child with you right now, I'm an inner child. I'm somebody's inner child. I'd like the cat. Then you shall have it. Make sure your inner child or your child you're working with has someone fun to hold on to, like a stuffed animal. All right. All right. Well, one of the things about working with kids is to know where the kids are at. So I'd like to share a couple things with you. First of all, there's a really great book. Anyone who works with hypnosis probably has some steps into NLP. And there's a book called NLP for Lazy Learning, How to Learn Faster and More Effectively by Diana Beaver. And don't you love that name? That's like metaphors. I just love it. She begins her book by reminding us who we're really dealing with here. Who or what? Okay, keep that in mind. Your brain waves. You're talking to a brain. You're relating to a brain. And she says to remember, and this is something that you all know. If you're taking notes, you're probably going to go, oh, okay, yeah, I know all about this stuff. You can listen to this little piece after you've finished hearing this little presentation. Brainwaves. Our brains operate at different frequencies depending upon what we're doing. Okay, now Scott's over there. He's probably going, yeah, okay, I got it. Yeah, all right. Yep. I know Bella's paying attention here. And I can see you too, Sue. So I'm watching you, Jordan. All right, just in case. And Jean, Todd, and Karen, I can see all of you out there as well as Joe and Becca. Got my eye on you, Joni. All right. And you, Tish, and Katie, I know you're there. Glenn, all right, so you stuck a picture up there. I can't really see what you're doing right now, but I'm aware of Hugh and James as well. Okay, and Lanita, I saw you earlier, so I definitely know that you're here too. Judith, I see that you're hiding. That's okay. I know you can be under your desk if you like. Hey, Larry, we're in the same space, so that works. Hey, Dr. Stephen. Okay, sorry, I get distracted easily, and that's something that you should know with kids. Delta waves occur in deep dreamless sleep, right? You can sleep and you're up in delta. Theta waves are present between sleeping and waking. And in those moments, this is theta, when a brilliant idea comes to us, although we seem to be miles and miles and miles away, These are the brain waves of inspiration. Okay. Anybody looking for inspiration? You're also trying to get into theta, right? Okay. Alpha waves appear when we are relaxed. And that's where we do hypnotherapy. Relaxed enough to allow our thoughts to flow freely and to be creative. Welcome to Cat's World. I love this place. I just got back from the forest of theta, so I like to hang out here and invite you all into my dream world. And beta waves, they're the busy grown-up world. The busy grown-up world where stress and all those fears reside. It's the bossy brain waves which dominate when we're under pressure or being competitive. Yep, sports, yep. Busy, bossy beta waves develop over the years. So here's something that's really important for you to get right away. Babies, as you would expect, use mostly delta waves because they're sleeping. They're sleeping all the time. Yeah, they're sleeping. Okay, so that makes perfect sense. All right, between the ages of 1 and 5, everybody put their hands up. I want to see this. 5, okay? We're going to go to 5 years old, okay? So between 1 and 5, theta waves dominate. Inspiration, right? Yeah, probably terrible twos. Very inspired. At about 5, the alpha waves come in and gradually increase until we are using them as much as theta waves. Okay, so at 5 years old, all right, keep in mind what's going on here. 1 and 5, you're in theta. You keep on going up from 5 and up, you get into alpha. And in our teens, alpha waves increase, theta waves decrease, and beta waves start to appear. Grow up, right? Because they're so competitive, beta waves may do their very best to take over from alpha waves. So let's start out with realizing that in order to be able to be with kids, you have to be on the same wavelength. Does that make sense? Yeah? Okay. All right, Lynn's nodding. And if Lynn nods, that means that we're okay. We're right there. So now we're going to get into something kind of fun. I think when we do things that really assign us into an exciting place to go, we probably will experience life in a whole different level. So I'm thinking that we're going to do a couple of breakouts here, but not quite yet. Just get ready. All right, not quite yet. I know some of you are getting very excited. The first thing we want to do is we want to give you an opportunity to step into the shoes of a child, okay? We're not just talking a child. We're talking about walking in a child's shoes of fear, all right? I mean, the word just makes you, right? Okay. Well, I wanted to be sure that everything was going to work with your fear because I want everyone to have a really super good experience here, okay? So I'm going to invite my scary self to bring you to a place of fear. All right, so hold on for just a second here. I'm going to bring up a little fear. And let me see, where's my fear? I know I put my fear, Joni, I know I put my fear here someplace. I'm sure I'm going to find my fear someplace over here. I just, here it goes. All right. First of all, know that fear can come in a lot of different ways. So I want to introduce you to fear by giving you an opportunity to actually go into a state of fear. Okay. So I'm going to bring in my other self and we'll let her give you an opportunity to get there, okay? All right, Kat, where are you at? Where are you at? I just know you're here. Oh, here you are. Okay, here we go. Hi, are you ready for a guided visualization for fear? Well, get comfortable. Join Becca and I in a guided visualization to help you get into the shoes of a child. See what it feels like to be a child. Just sit back, get comfortable, and here we go. I think I'll get back to my hiding place where all hypnotherapists go. See you soon. This is a guided visualization with Kat Wilson and Becca Hufford. And we want you to have an opportunity to become a kid and understand what it's like to be a child again. The ups, the downs, the highs, the lows, the fears, the joys. And in the next few moments, approximately 7 minutes, we're asking you to sit down, maybe in a place like a chair or a couch or a bed, someplace where you can be away from other animals or people, to close your eyes and remember back and visualize when you were a kid. So go ahead and get comfortable, relax, close your eyes. Just think back on some of the times that you had when you were a child. Maybe go back to when you were 4 or 5, or maybe you were 11, or maybe 10. Just taking a nice, slow, deep breath and let it go. And let's do 2 more breaths like that. Breathing in and gently feel your body relaxing. And as you feel comfortably relaxed more and more, I wonder if you can let your mind drift back, maybe to yesterday, and letting your mind drift back to 6 months before. And as you feel more and more comfortable, I wonder if you could just let yourself drift back to a year. And then comfortably let yourself move all the way back to the age of 12. And at the age of 12, back at a time when you might have had a fear. Remember the fear. Remember what it was like. Remember how you went through it. And remember how you learned how to get over that fear. And maybe you might feel the sense of an early memory. As a child, you did the best you could based on what you knew at the time. And as you remember, when you were younger, remember a time when you were in a situation, a place, or with a certain person, and something happened, and you can remember the fear. Remember how that felt. Remember how it felt afterwards. As the fear went away, and maybe you grew up a little more and you understood
But the fear was just a fear and nothing more.
And maybe you went to the doctor. What were you worried about? Or in a classroom? Was there something?
Or going to sleep at night?
At night in your room? Or maybe your family made changes. New people, new places, something confusing. Notice what it was that was a fear when you were quite young.
And now that you're older, it's no longer a fear. But sometimes it's good to remember these things so that when you deal with children, you can understand how they feel the fear.
That's right. Coming from an adult perspective can give you more insight. So now that you're aware of something in the past, allow yourself to start to drift forward slowly, taking all the time that you want or need. As you bring yourself back into the room with Kat
And Becca,
and start to feel the texture under your fingertips. And as you're taking in deeper and deeper breaths and feeling yourself coming back into the room, wiggle your fingers and your toes, squeeze your eyes, make funny faces with your face.
feeling more energized, getting ready to wake up and write down that fear and write down how you felt.
That's right. Feeling yourself more and more ready, and in a moment you'll open your eyes and you'll write for maybe about 5 minutes, about half a page, and share what that fear or worry or whatever it was as a child. And now we're going to count 1 to 5. 1, feel yourself coming more and more into the room. 2, starting to wiggle your fingers and your toes. 3, feel your legs moving, just wiggling them a little bit more. 4, feel the top of your head. And 5, your eyes are open. Now, begin to write. Oh, I hope that you're awake now. So now, whew, that was quite a journey. That was a regression. Get ready to write. You've got 5 minutes and then you'll be in a room with someone else. Look, I already got started. Okay, go for it. Now, it's your time. Grab your books, grab a pen, and you have 5 minutes to write about your fear. After 5 minutes, you're going to find yourself in a room with someone else because you're going to click on a link that says join this room, and then you're going to join the room. And because you're all very cooperative people, right? Okay. So, timer, which is the time police, will you please go ahead and begin timing for 5 minutes? And I will go ahead and do that. Some of you might still have a couple things that you want to write down and you're wishing that you just had a couple more minutes. So I'm just going to give you a couple more minutes while I share with everybody else a little video on fear. Okay, get ready.
Mm-hmm.
Here we go.
Oh, can you make sure that the volume is up?
Okay,
As much as you can?
is that better?
We'll see.
Can you hear? Yes?
Yeah. Thank you.
You're the iPhone.
Okay, all right. Everybody had a little time
Yeah.
just to experience something just a little bit different. And now what I'd like to do is I'd like to invite us to actually share out loud what were some of the fears that you had as kids. Feel free to open up your mic and share.
Well, one of my fears was lighting a match. Couldn't light a match. And I was in Girl Scouts and it was my turn to light a match. And I just couldn't do it. My hand was shaking and didn't light a match till I was about 15. And that was when I started smoking, unfortunately. Was never afraid to light a match again.
Exactly. It's so funny that Bella and I ended up in a room together because I had exactly the same fear and the same reason I started lighting a match.
Well, you know, I wanted to make a suggestion that you could develop a hypnosis session for some of these fears, but I'm not so sure that would be a good one to start with. Maybe.
And of course, I was afraid that there was a big monster hiding under the bed. And so I would run from the hallway and jump onto my bed so that the monster couldn't get me. And to this day, I still can't sleep with my closet doors open.
There is a monster under the bed.
There is.
In the closet and in the closet.
I'm going to check that later on. I'm in a different room than I usually am in, and I haven't checked this room for monsters. Thank you very much, Judith and Bella. Matches and monsters. Ooh, what a combination. Katie, how about you? What was the fear you had?
Am I muted or can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Oh, good. Really, it was very generalized. It was don't screw up. That was it. Don't F up and do things the best that you can. Otherwise, you might end up being under a bed somewhere for a few hours.
Yeah.
So that made me pretty uptight, but you know, over time, you know, you work through it and you know, you find joy, right?
I like how you say joy was going to be the outcome.
Yes.
I hope
Yes.
everybody who's listening is thinking about that. Fear and joy. Joy is the antithesis of fear.
I think even saying the word joy,
Yeah.
the joy, the OY,
Mhm.
is something really fluid and open.
Yeah, it makes me smile, just like Katie.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thanks,
Thank you
Kat.
so much.
Yeah.
Who else would like to share their fear?
Well, for me, it was deep water.
Deep water.
We were
Whoa.
thrown into a creek right after we had moved. My mom was a school teacher, and we got moved every so often. And between 11 and 12, we had to make a move to a new place. And the place I'd left, everybody really liked me. And then we got to the new place, and everybody didn't. So they threw me into the water, and I thought I was going to drown. And so maybe 10 or 12 years later, I confronted that when I went to college at age 24, and took swimming classes and overcame the fear of swimming. So
I
that
love
was
your
a
I
big one.
love your story, Lenita, how you could even I can feel myself feeling scared, and I can feel myself just by hearing your story growing up and deciding to take swimming lessons and taking swimming lessons and learning something new and no longer having a fear.
So I could get on a diving board after all those years and dive in. Once I got stuck on the end of a diving board, and somebody had to come and rescue me, which was terribly embarrassing. So when I decided to go back to college as a single mom, I decided I had to learn to get over fears. And that was the big one for me. And I had to get over it in order to move forward.
You had to get over it and then you move forward.
Yes.
And so, just out of curiosity, after you got through that fear, how did the other fears go?
Well, I really confronted a lot of things at that point. I had a husband that was harassing me, my ex-husband, and a lot of problems around that, just trying to focus and get through school, and so it just made me almost fierce. And I was able to raise my children, stayed single for 12 years, and raised my kids, and got through college.
Amazing how learning how to swim can get you through all that, isn't it?
Right.
Thank you so much. That's such a wonderful story.
Thank you.
Jordan, how about your fear?
I went a totally different direction, but maybe not. I had heights, being pushed to my death, embarrassment, and vulnerability.
Oh my gosh,
Yeah.
those are still my fears.
Yeah.
Ooh, that can be scary. Let's find out what Dr. Stevens' fears were.
Well, my 5-year-old fear was drowning because I almost drowned, and nobody noticed. So just talking to Tish about this, that yeah, I was at the river and everybody was jumping in the and drank a lot of water, and somehow got to the shore and look over to my mom, and she hadn't even noticed that I was in the river. And I didn't tell anybody because I thought I might get in trouble.
Oh, wow. Wow.
So
That nobody saw you and then you were afraid to say anything because you could get in trouble. Then you were afraid of getting in trouble.
that's right. Yeah, so I couldn't get comfort because I would have gotten in trouble for doing it in the first place.
Yeah. Which could have been anything, right? Spanking, grounding, friends,
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah, all of the above, probably. Yeah.
Wow. Wow.
But when I got into Boy Scouts, I did get my life-saving swimming merit badges, kind of give me a little bit more confidence to move from there.
So just going into that place of Boy Scouts, that gave you an opportunity to get over something that was really difficult.
Oh, yeah.
Well, I'm glad you shared that, and I hope some more people are going to share some of their fears inside of the chat window. I had a fear of public speaking. And because that fear affected me on such a high level, I remember at one point needing to go and break that fear. And it's something I remember very, very clearly in sitting down and having a talk with myself. And this is something that we can encourage kids to do every now and then by having a talk with yourself. And whether you say, well, I'm going to have a talk with my older self, or I'm going to have a talk with my younger self. And even in hypnosis, one of the things that I've discovered is that when kids have an opportunity to express it outside of them by putting the fear in a different place, then they can have a bigger conversation. I have a fear, I have a fear, I have a fear. All right, okay, all right. So you have a fear, right? Yeah, I got a fear, I got a fear. Okay, why don't you face everybody out there? I don't want to talk alone. Can I bring my best friend? Oh, okay. Who's best friend? Okay, all right. So I have a fear that people won't like me because I'm different. What? You and I are twins. No, we're not twins. I thought we were twins. Well, anyway, my fear is that people won't like me because I'm different. We should talk to Kat about that. We could. Let's talk to these people about it. Maybe somebody, does anybody here ever had a fear that you were different? Anybody?
Mhm.
Yeah. Talk to me, Scott.
Yes, of course.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So you see, this is where we can really have a conversation. Thank you too very much. These are a couple of my friends, and I have these available whenever I have sessions with kids. They're really wonderful. I actually order them on Oriental Trading, and I have these different diversity puppets so that I have little girls wearing neat little overalls. I have African American, I have all kinds of puppets. And when kids come in, they go into that alpha world, they go into another place, and it's always so much fun when they have someone else who's a friend. And I give these to them. I mean, you can handle this when you're doing a great session and kids have something that they can walk away with, which is really good. Now, one of the things I've noticed is that unless you have instant rapport, you know who the children are, they will probably like having a puppet they can have a conversation with. They might even want to. So I'm always prepared with a couple different ones. And I actually will offer to have a couple of these puppets sitting on a chair someplace so that they can come in. But when I'm online, I bring them up here and I'll invite them to come in and have a conversation. And it's interesting how kids go into a different place when they're talking to a puppet. Let me share a little story with you. The way that I learned this many years ago is I was driving and I was having some challenges with my kids in the back seat. And I asked them some questions and they weren't answering me. So I was driving and I pulled a puppet up and I had the puppet talk to them while I'm driving. And they would talk to the puppet, but they wouldn't talk to me. Now get that, they know I'm their mom. They know I'm up in front, but no, they won't have a question with me. No, but they would talk to the puppet. So these are things that would really be useful in your practice to get. I would love to hear everybody's fears because it's a really important thing to gather. And I'd also like to go ahead and take you step by step into a couple of other pieces. So you've walked in a child's shoes, you've had an experience of some fear. So here's where you want to find some places to look for solutions. So as a child is expressing their fear, you might want to notice and really listen and watch without jumping to conclusions, and maybe even noticing. Is a solution you could offer them one with self-esteem? Is it going to be hypnosis that works with family problems? Perhaps it's concentration in school. And of course, concentration, those of you who have learned about NLP know, one of the things that really helps concentration is to get into a learning state. that can make a big difference because you get into that alpha state, which is so much wider, and it provides a way for you to remember. Is your hypnosis session going to be for bullying, maybe even cyberbullying, which is really rough on kids? Or are they dealing with something medical? Maybe they're going into the dentist, maybe they're having some shots, maybe there's going to be some pain. Take the opportunity to listen to the child talk and have them share as much as they can, just in a way that seems like it's very easy, almost like a game. But how do you make it a game? Well, you could pull up puppets. Puppets work. Another thing you could do is sometimes when people get into a place where they feel like they have a story or a game or something else, maybe what they could do is they could think about what is happening, maybe from the perspective, and hoping everybody can see this, of a seed. So what if your problem, just like we were just listening to some people who had fears of drowning and they took swimming lessons, what if your problem was a seed? And what if you were able to take that seed and you could plant it and it could grow something? And this is where asking kids to draw pictures of what it could be like, they go into trance when they do things and they need to be active. Kids in hypnosis, depending on the age, can be doing things and be in a state of hypnosis because they're in alpha, right? They're in that playful place. So when I'm working with kids, I come up with a lot of different paintings and they're in a different place. And of course, I'm working with a counseling center as well. And the kids I work with have been abused on some levels. And some of the things that I'll do is I'll get really playful and say, well, why don't we go ahead and develop some seeds? What do you really want? Sometimes they say they want hope. And in that case, I want to say, well, hope for what? What would that be like? How would you see hope? What would you hear with hope? What would you feel? And really, what does hope taste like? What would that be like if you had hope today? Kids always relate to friends. They always relate to other people. And it's interesting if you give them a metaphor that they can really take off from this. Okay, so if we plant the seed of hope along with some friends and love, what happens with the seeds? Well, you get roots. Yeah, you get some roots. And if you're planting something, you definitely want to have some soil, and the soil is what nurtures. That's what nurtures that experience of hope or friends. Who nurtures you? Who is your helper? Who is the one who watches out for you? What else can be really helpful for your seed of hope or friendship to really grow? Do you need to have more time? Maybe less chores so that you have more space to do your homework or quiet? Or maybe it's something else. Now, what's it going to grow into? What will it become? Will it be something that looks like a white flower? Will it be something that looks like maybe a bush or a tree? It could be anything here. It can grow. Your roots can keep on connecting with other roots. And when you ask the question, experience, and you start adding a couple other words to it, hold on to that dialogue in your mind. And then just say, would you like to play a really great game? This is simple. This is something that adults like to do too. Just close your eyes and then go into that place where you're becoming a plant. And kids, a lot of times, especially if they're working with attention deficit or some kind of busyness, they might close their eyes and they might bounce around, and that's okay. It's so important not to tell the kids, stop it, I'm hypnotizing you, sit. You can't do that stuff with kids. It just doesn't work that way. You could do it with adults. That they could be a lot of fun that way. You can point your finger at an adult and you can do this and the adults will follow you really well. So let me step into a couple other pieces, because this is a very simple type of way to take kids into a trance and go to a wonderful, wonderful place. I'm going to bring up my presentation again here. So let's go ahead and take that metaphor. All right. Of course, when I'm working with kids, there's a lot of different elements behind it. When they start talking about what they see or what they hear, notice that if they're really talking a lot about what they see, those people who work with that will know, well, they're highly visual, so they'll relate to you really well. You might want to ask them about the colors that signify calm or whatever they're looking for, hope. And when you ask them to plant this inside of themselves and ask them what would get in the way, then they have something else that they can put their story into. I mean, here I've got some bees that are buzzing around in this picture, and bees carry messages of pollen from place to place. And sometimes once you've gotten the story, you can add a couple elements about how bees are helpers. So whenever you're working with kids, even a lot of times if you're working with teens, it's really important to always ask them, who is it who's there for you? Might be their dog, might be the neighbor, could be an aunt. One of the things that I've really noticed about working with kids is that we sometimes have another superhero in our mind, or maybe we can relate to a sitcom. And that can be a really great experience if kids like to put themselves into that. Of course, I don't watch TV that much. I mean, we don't have a TV, but I used to. And this morning I purposely watched a Bugs Bunny cartoon so I could get ready to present to you, because I know I'd be presenting to a whole bunch of kids in this Zoom room today, which is what you all are right now. And I really have fun with kids. So first thing you want to do is get into the space with other people and remember where they're at and how they're really operating. Because once you get into that daydream, you can start creating all kinds of really great solutions. So when the kids come, you're going to be making a hypnosis session that's going to work for kids, and they're not your only client. I mean, it's like those of you, how many of you were also doing coaching? Okay, some other hands up. Okay. When you do coaching, does anybody do executive coaching? Okay, all right. So Larry, you probably have more than one client when you do executive coaching, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so you have the client and who else?
Usually their executive team.
So there you have it. You're going to have more than one person involved in this.
Right.
With kids, you're going to have a parent and you're going to have a child. And one of my great experiences with kids is when I introduce them to guided visualization. And by the way, you're going to get a goodie. I sent it to Joe Bennett and Joni, and it's my cheat sheet. It's kind of like a list of pediatric hypnosis solution notes. Start your session in a way that's, first of all, with talking to the child, and also every now and then reference the parent. When it's time to do a sample of, well, would you like a little sample of what it's like to have hypnosis? Shall I hypnotize your mother? You know, usually the mother is like, well, I didn't come here for that. That's when you get to do the lemon test or do something with the balloons. I mean, you all know suggestibility tests, but whatever you do, don't call it a test. Call it something fun, a fun experience. And then ask the parent to sit there. And as you do the lemon suggestibility test, guess who's listening? Yep, the sponge sitting over there, probably rocking on a chair, or maybe even still playing with the cat that you handed them at the very beginning of the session. And parents can sometimes become your clients too, because your session, even though your session is with a child, a lot of times the family is a part of this. And frequently I have had mothers who came back later on and said, I'd like to come in because I realize I've got some challenges. Just in case you've never seen, it's kind of good it's kind of good to have an opportunity to watch parents with their kids a little bit and just kind of see, well, how are they really relating? I've had the good fortune of seeing great, great parents. One time I caught somebody who was yelling at their child outside, and it just made me realize that there was something else going on. And I didn't yell at the parent, but I can tell you that I became very aware that this child had more than one fear. It wasn't just the homework he had to do, it was also the parent who was right there on top of them with all the different things that they were feeling very afraid of. So let's see. Did want to go ahead and make sure that you've got a couple other things in here. So let's go ahead and step into something else. So when you have a child with you, always giving respect to the parent. Your forms will all have to indicate that you have permission to just be present with the child. I actually have one room, and then the parent can sit in the fireplace room where they can hear what's going on. But if the child wanted to whisper to me, they can. One of the big no-nos is never touch. We don't touch children. We can give them anchors by asking them to remember a wonderful time when they were really happy, and then pinch their fingers and their thumbs. And this is something that I did back many years ago when I was teaching kids how to overcome the fear of speaking in a classroom. And I would spend 8 weeks with them coming and teaching them, and then also giving them the sense of guided visualization to hear the sound of waves to calm them before they had an experience of speaking. And always to have their happy anchor available. So now, what I'm really curious about is if you had a child right now who was sitting with you, and let's say this child had the same fear that you had. Think about you as a child, and think about the universe with its great sense of humor sending you the exact client that you could have been, okay? Well, guess what? This happens all the time. You're going to meet a younger you somehow. Maybe you'll recognize them, maybe you won't. Open up your heart and listen. Sometimes you can start a conversation with the child by just being present, not trying to insert any of your words, especially on the first session. When I meet with kids, usually the first time that I meet with them, and I haven't done a whole lot of work outside of the paint parties with abuse during COVID, but in my office, I'll meet with a child before I have them as a client. And I'll say, come on in and we'll just meet each other and let's just see how we like each other. And so I'll meet with them for about 30 minutes. And I don't charge for that session. I just give that to them. Because you see, it's my opportunity to think, can I work with this child? I've worked with kids who have autistic traits. I've worked with kids who have ADD and hyperactivity. I've worked with a lot of very scary things with doctors bringing their clients in, and also kids having ports put in because they have cancer and they're just about to go in and go for a lot of different procedures. And I like the thought of, first of all, show up so the child can see this is a person who I can feel safe with. And that's really important. Doesn't mean you can always do that, but if you could do that in the form of either giving or even record a little video and tell them a story, something where they can see your eyes looking at them. And you all know this, that when you're actually having a Zoom session, that you want to be looking up towards the camera. So you always want to position your client someplace in that area where the camera is, so they feel like you're looking at them, right? Okay. So when my children were very young, I noticed a lot of things that were going on. And I don't know how many of you as little kids had this concern about self-esteem or that you were going to be maybe different. But I wrote this story. So now I want you all to go back to your 5-year-old and your 12-year-old self, because I'm going to tell you a story of Maury and his ability. So first of all, I want wiggle around. Come on, Glenn. I'm watching you. Wiggle around. All right. Jean, Todd, and Karen, shake your hands. Okay. Judith, I can't see you. Larry, I know you're there. Okay. Wiggle around. Kids, wiggle around. I always tell kids to wiggle around, rustle some paper, do some things. I can always mute you from my side. Okay. Got all that in there. And then get into that little part of you, that 5-year-old. Okay. And I want to, oh, good. Katie brought a 5-year-old in the room. 5-year-old? Older? 20? Maybe. Well, your child is welcome. So anybody who's got a child, they're welcome. All right. So get ready. We're going to hear the story of Maury and his ability. And if you're all really, really good, I will be very happy to email it to anybody who asks me for the story. Are you ready? Okay. Get settled. All right. Once upon a grapevine in a field lived a bunch of grapes. They were of the purple grape variety of grapes. Each grape started out as a little sour green ball and grew larger and larger, and each grape changed color too. Each grape except for Maury. Maury was smack in the middle of the bunch of grapes. He was growing, but he was not turning purple. He was growing into a big green grape. Now, this may seem unimportant to you or me, but it was very important for Maury to turn purple. Each grape was supposed to turn purple in Maury's bunch of grapes. The other grapes would tease Maury too, which hurt his feelings. Hey, Maury, just who are you to stay green? Didn't your mommy ever show you how to turn purple? You can't turn purple. You don't know how to turn purple. Why don't you just purple up like everyone else, Maury? The other purple grapes laughed and laughed. This made Maury very, very sad. Can you imagine how sad Maury was? This wasn't accepted. He just couldn't purple. Maury did not want to stay a green grape. He just didn't know what to do to make himself purple. He worried and he worried. Finally, one day he decided to talk to the sun. Sun, what can I do to turn purple? Maury asked. The sun answered him. Maury, each grape has the ability to do something. If you look hard, you will find what you can do, and you will find something good about your ability. And then high, higher, high in the sky, and shined. The sun warmed the grapes in the field. The sun smiled. Everything was filled with sunshine. Everything, that is, except for Maury. He was confused. What did the sun mean? Ability. What was Maury's ability? Maury remembered when he was just a tiny grape. He would wonder who he was. Maury would say to the other grapes, "Who am I? Who am I? I don't know who I am." And the other grapes, they were so busy turning purple that they did not answer him. I'll bet at this time you're really wondering about this, Maury. You're really wanting to know more and more about him. Oh, well, thought Maury, I will just wait and see. Maybe my ability will be easier to find tomorrow. And just when Maury was falling asleep for a nice afternoon nap, he heard a laugh. He opened his eyes, and what do you think he saw? A dog? No. A bird? No. Maury saw a purple grape eater, and the purple grape eater was picking the biggest, most purple grapes and eating them. Ah! Maury was very frightened. He wanted to hide and he couldn't even move. But the purple grape eater never saw Maury because he did not have the ability to look purple. Maury only had the ability to look green because he was green. Suddenly, Maury remembered what the sun had said. Each grape has the ability to do something. Maury had the ability to stay green. And when he looked up, he saw the purple grape eater hopping away. And Maury sure was happy. And he was very glad to know that he had such an ability to stay green. Kids, I'd like you to all go back into your rooms. And I'd like you to go ahead and talk to your partner a little bit about your fears and even share, and we're only going to do this for 5 minutes, okay? Share something about your story with the other person. Remember, you're still all 5, okay? All right, you've got 5 minutes, and here we go. Rooms are open. Go ahead and share. From maybe some of you, what happened when you got together with the person in the room with you?
Well,
Now,
I immediately, oh, go ahead. I was just going to say, I immediately noticed that it was the same person as the last time. Ish. So we get to further our conversation.
Well, I did that on purpose so that you would feel comfortable because you'd already been with your therapist.
Got it.
All right, how about some of you other people out there? Anyone else want to share? How was that when you got back together with the person?
I'll speak. Scott and I talked, and I think, and I mentioned that it was absolutely essential that I use that joy to help reframe my entire relationship with my mom.
Oh,
So that was really, really special. And I'm sure Scott has something to say with it himself.
Yeah, I get along a lot better with your mom now too, that you've made that peace. So thank you. No, I love the metaphor about the soil because it's really what we connect people with is the richness and the gift of all those past experiences, whether they were easy or difficult or even traumatic, in helping us be the unique gift that we are to the world today. So I think as I stepped back in, it was less associated with the fear of those experiences, but more about the blooming potential of those experiences.
I love that you said that because that's going to help me really wrap this up in a really terrific way. I did.
I read this episode.
You read this episode. All right. I did say I'd end at 2:30, and cat time is usually an extra minute. I'd like to share a book that I think is one of my very favorite books. It's called Harry the Hypnopotamus, Metaphorical Tales for the Treatment of Children by Linda Thompson. And I'll be sure to put this inside of the chat window so that you could see. Another one of my very favorite things is this book that some of you may have seen. It's called Green Eggs and Ham by Dr. Seuss. This is great for salespeople, all right? Even adult kids can really enjoy this. The book that I mentioned to you is called NLP for Lazy Learning, How to Learn Faster and More Effectively by Diana Beaver. So these are 3 books, and I know I could have shared with you all kinds of other things. The most important thing I'd like to have you end with is that you still have a child inside of you. And it's always really important to celebrate on every single level that you can, knowing that not only did this child have to open up and share it with you, but coming out and making a change, that can be scary, but knowing that somebody is going to be a witness to your greatness calls for celebration. So always, always tell children, I'm really looking forward to hearing your story. And remember, sometimes all we need to do is take little steps. We don't have to take big steps. I'd like to share with you, I got this card from somebody who's inside of this meeting here. And it was meant to be the Q&A opportunity for you all. But I love, love, love this card. Kindness counts. 1, empathy. 2, compassion. 3, love. 4, courage. And 5, grace. Taking a child out of hypnosis by counting them from 1 to 5, using these kind of words is a beautiful way for you to end the session and let them walk out with a really good post-hypnotic statement. It's spring, yay! All the possibilities of new life, new beauty are starting to awaken. Go plant good seeds in the minds of kids and grow joy because you have your finger on the future. Thank you for listening. If you want more, you can reach me through calling a Positiva at 503-525-0595. That is a landline, so if you send a text, I won't get it. So ask me privately from my cell phone. You can email me at catwilsoncoach@gmail.com or take a look at the website apositiva.com. I do my best to try to get in there every now and then, make a difference. And you go and make a difference. Here's a little snapshot of my 9 grandchildren and one of my daughters. So ranging from, he's now 18 months, all the way up to 21. Actually, she's going to be 22. This is one of my daughters. These are all my grandchildren by one daughter. So I just want you to know I've had a little experience with kids. I love kids, and kids are our future. So go out and find somebody to make a difference with and enjoy life. For those of you who would like a copy of Maury and His Ability, send me an email at that secret place that I just told you that you can contact me, and I will share this story that I wrote 46 years ago. Now, I've also been given permission after Joni puts the recording off to give you all the opportunity to take a break where I will run a Bugs Bunny cartoon. So those of you who want to have that experience, that will follow. All right, I know I'm a little bit over, Joni, but if there are any other questions, I would be delighted to answer them later on if there's more time.
Thank you.
Thank you. That was great, Kat. So appreciated. All right, let's go ahead and take about a 15-minute break. And so that brings us back at about 10 minutes to 3. And then at 3 o'clock, we'll have Larry get started with his presentation.
All right. So let's see here. Let me get my digital act together here and show you some visuals. So I'm assuming you can all see the slides at the moment?
Yep.
Awesome. So I'm really excited to share with you some ideas about shamanism and hypnotherapy. This has been a really fascinating journey for me. I actually started, hypnotherapy is my first modality, my first methodology that I ever picked up, and started out, I think it was 1989 is when I originally got certified as a clinical hypnotherapist. And it was, I think, in about the mid to late 90s, I was teaching hypnotherapy and NLP at a place called Anchor Point Associates in Salt Lake City, Utah. And at the time, they were doing a modeling project. They wanted to model exceptional healers. And so they started with, just people kind of in the Salt Lake area who did energy work. So we modeled some, of course, Reiki practitioners and Shinkiko, Tui Na, and then we discovered a Peruvian shaman named Amerigo Yabar. And so they did a modeling project down in southern Utah, and unfortunately I wasn't able to attend. And I can't remember what was going on in my world, but I couldn't make it. But I was really interested. And at the time, Amerigo was an associate of Dr. Alberto Villoldo. And some of you may be familiar with Alberto and some of his work. He's written several books on shamanism. He does a lot of online content as well, especially recently. And so there were several of us instructors at Anchor Point who were given the opportunity to study with Alberto. And I went through his Healing the Light Body School program, and then went on to take all of the programs that the Four Winds offered at the time. And then I went on to study with a few other teachers and traditions, a little bit with the Toltec tradition and the Hawaiian Huna tradition. And it was interesting because I started off just as a, like I'm sure I've shared in other presentations that I like to think of myself as a model collector. So I collect models, I collect maps of the territory, and whether they're psychological, philosophical, spiritual, business models, I just like models. I like collecting them. I like seeing what they produce. And I also got really interested in what happens when you blend models together. So if you combine, say, hypnotherapy and shamanism, what does it produce? And it's kind of like, just like each of your two eyes sees a slightly different perspective on the world. And then those images come into your brain and your brain integrates them. And there's an emergent property called depth perception. So we're able to see in 3D because we have these two slightly different perspectives that the brain integrates. And I think that's also true with belief systems, perspectives, maps, models, and so on, that if you look at things from different points of view, your brain can integrate them, and then what emerges is insight. And so I was really interested in what happens when you blend maps and models of the territory. And when I originally started in shamanism, I thought most of it was just straight up superstition. And I still think that some of it is. But there's other parts of it that I think are extremely useful. And I've been studying, practicing, teaching shamanism for, oh gosh, maybe a dozen years now. and just finished a year-long program. In fact, Joni and Sue were in that program, journeying with us through the medicine wheel. So maybe at some point they'd be willing to share their experience a little bit with the program. So what I'd like to do is share with you some specific ideas, just kind of as an overview. So I gave you a little intro about my background with hypnotherapy and shamanism, modeling healers, gathering maps of the territory. And so there are several commonalities that I'd like to highlight in my presentation about hypnotherapy and shamanism. Have an exercise on symbolic engagement that you can use with clients, and also your own exploration. And also similarities on how both shamanism and hypnotherapy regard the structure of consciousness and how our mind operates. There's other elements that are really common between hypnotherapy and shamanism, in that we work with altered states, and also the power of language, the power of suggestion. And then I'd like to share with you a couple of therapeutic practices, how, for example, age regression and soul retrieval are very similar to each other, and deep trance identification with shamanic shape-shifting. So pretty interesting stuff, at least from my perspective, and hopefully you will agree. So let's get into some of the, at least on a big picture, the commonalities between hypnotherapy and shamanism. And so just beginning with sort of a definition of shamanism, for those of you who may not be familiar with it as a practice, I think of shamanism kind of like yoga. You know, it's a form of spirituality, but it's more a collection of practices that you can use for your mental, physical, emotional, spiritual, and energetic health. And so the definition I want to offer you, I'm going to read this from an article I wrote for a Japanese healing magazine some time ago. So the term shaman is an Evenki word from Siberia, meaning one who sees or one who penetrates to the source. Shamans are tribal healers or leaders who perceive the fundamental nature of the universe and see the big picture. Shamanism is an animistic worldview that understands that all life is sacred and that all life is interconnected. Shamans deeply understand the systemic nature of the world and the dynamics of ecology. Because if you make changes in one part of a system, it creates changes in the other parts of the system because everything is interconnected. In the natural world, if you pollute the water, it affects the soil, which affects the plants, and then affects the animals who eat the plants, and the humans that consume both. So what we do to and for the environment, we do to and for ourselves in both beneficial and detrimental ways. Now, you can also liken that to your own inner ecology. So our inner world, we have all these different parts of ourselves and so on. And when our inner parts are playing nicely in the sandbox, we experience a kind of inner harmony. And so even, you know, like our physical, emotional, mental, spiritual, energetic, and all of our relationships, all of that system is interconnected. And we know that our mind affects the body, and the body affects the mind, and the mind affects the emotions, and so on. So to be able to look at things sort of holistically, I think is really important. And that's why I like having multiple maps, multiple models, so that we can work with people as an entire system. And so I have, you know, tools, techniques, methods for the physical, the mental, the emotional, spiritual, and so on. So for hypnotherapy, for me, the guiding principle with hypnotherapy, the main objective is empowerment. How do we help people access the internal and external resources to solve their problems and achieve their outcomes? And so that they feel like they're at choice with the way they think, the way they feel, the way they act, the way they speak, and the results they produce in the world with their actions. So that's kind of my frame, my way of thinking about the, you know, what hypnotherapy really serves. And of course, there's lots of layers and levels to that, as we all know. Shamanism, on the other hand, is the main guiding principle is a term called Aini. Now, when I studied with Alberto, he primarily studied with the Q'ero shamans in the high Andes of Peru. He did study other indigenous people around the world, but mainly focused on the Karo people of the high Andes. And the language they speak is Quechua, the Quechua language. So the term Aini is a Quechua word that means sacred harmony and reciprocity. And I like to think of it as being in right relationship. So the main objective with the Andean shamanic tradition is to access the medicine, which would be analogous to internal external resources, to find right relationship with yourself and the world. So there's the inner harmony and the outer harmony, the inner right relationship and the outer right relationship. And so the intersection there, this little almond-shaped structure where and you'll see as we get into this, I got a little crazy with the Venn diagrams here. But so the area of overlap here where they share is really intentionality. And that how intentional do we live our lives? And what is the quality of our engagement with anything? What's our quality of our engagement with our past, with our future, with other people, circumstances, and conditions, with our physical nature, with our non-physical nature? What is the quality of our relationship and our engagement with those areas? So that one of the things they share is living our lives more conscious, intentional, deliberately. And then that way we're more likely to fulfill our purpose and potential. And we can also learn to become responsive to what happens to us rather than reactive. So we all know, well, you know, the triggers and the stuff that comes from trauma, post-traumatic stress syndrome and things like that, and how many of us experience being very reactive to what happens. Somebody says or does something, or maybe they don't say or don't do something, and then we have this automatic unconscious reaction. Sometimes it serves us, sometimes it doesn't. But I like the idea of shifting from reactive to responsive, to where I choose my responses to life, and I can use hypnosis and NLP and other methodologies to kind of install them like you would install an app on your phone, so that it operates more automatically and unconsciously. But it's doing it in a way that we want, that we've chosen. And that both hypnotherapy and NLP are paths of personal evolution. I'm sorry, both hypnotherapy and shamanism are paths of personal evolution. So of course we can make changes within ourselves using these methodologies, so that, you know, we can again solve our own problems, achieve our own goals, and develop our purpose and potential as individuals. But it's also a potential path of service that we can, of course, work with clients and groups and even support our own community in many ways. And so I really like that they're very complementary methodologies. So taking the Venn a little farther, one of the things that Alberto teaches, that particularly with the Karo shamans, is that they have what they call the 4 levels of engagement. So they engage the world in these 4 ways. Sometimes they do them simultaneously, like they perceive the world through these 4 filters at the same time, or they might use them individually or in combination. So the first realm is the literal realm here. And so the literal realm is literally what your senses are picking up. We experience the world through our 5 senses, and many of us, of course, believe there are more senses. So we might pick up things from our intuition and our instinct, and maybe inspiration from spirit. So there are other senses other than our 5 literal senses. But when you pay attention to what your senses are literally picking up, before your mind has a chance to grab it and label it and describe it and interpret it and give meaning to it, that we can just be present to the literal information coming into our senses. And I think really this is also kind of the domain of science, where science is trying to objectively look at the external world and give some sort of description as to how the world operates. And then that description, that map, that model, then becomes a tool that we can use to make some useful predictions. That if I mix this with that, it produces something consistently. Or that, you know, if I put something in water, it may change its properties. And we start to observe the natural world and be able to make some useful conclusions about the patterns we're noticing in the world. So it's the realm of observation, sensory awareness, facts, logic, the literal world, the physical world, and the realm of causality. And usually in this arena, the literal realm is where we have the belief that the past causes the present, and the things we do in the present cause the future. So it's kind of a linear model of causality. Shamanically, this is also in the Andean medicine wheel, which they call the Chicana, is the realm of the serpent. And so the serpent is, as a metaphor, she teaches us how to shed our past the way the serpent sheds her skin, which is all at once. And so we can change our relationship to the past by understanding that even though we can't change the past, we can change our relationship to it and how we interpret the meaning of it. And that's often, for example, where hypnotherapy can come in, and processes like age regression or NLP processes like change personal history or re-imprinting can really help us change our relationship to the past. The symbolic realm is the realm of now we're creating representations of our experience. So now the experience comes inside our mind, and we record the pictures and the sounds and the songs and the feelings that happen in our experience, and they become represented inside of us. And of course, language is a big part of how we represent our experience to ourselves. And so in the symbolic arena, this is what I think of as the realm of psychology and sociology. And it's how we give meaning to our experiences. And so this becomes the area of language, beliefs, meaning, values, symbols, metaphors, and emotional intelligence. So it goes from the physical to the emotional realm. And how well are we able to not only manage our own emotional states, self-regulation, but how aware are we of other people and their emotional responses to things? Are we noticing? Are we paying attention? Do we have that sensory acuity to notice what's going on with the people we're working with, and then be able to respond in useful ways? Shamanically, this is also in the West, on the medicine wheel, the archetype of the jaguar. And so the jaguar is, of course, a hunter, a tracker. And so as a jaguar is hunting for its next meal, is tracking, looking for the signs for how am I going to find my next meal. And so oftentimes I go into jaguar when I'm working with somebody, and I'm like tracking for their limiting beliefs, or I'm tracking for what they think is the cause of their current symptoms. I'm tracking for how they represent the experience of themselves with the language that they use. And so it's a lot of tracking and following signs, and then making conclusions about what I think their limitations are and how I might be able to help them. The mythic domain is the realm of, I think of this as spirituality and religion. And shamanically, this is where a symbol and its object become one ceremonially. So for example, a shaman might create a sand painting, which shamanic sand paintings are an interesting practice because it's a little bit of a misnomer, because they neither involve sand nor painting. But they usually will take natural objects like leaves and twigs and pine cones and stones, and they'll make a mandala on the ground that will so accurately represent their client and whatever their issue is or whatever their outcome is. And they create it symbolically in a sand painting, a kind of mandala, and then they infuse it with their intent and their energy, and they let it sit or cook for about 24 hours. And then they might shift the sand painting on a literal level. They'll shift the relationship between the objects. And the idea is that energetically, it changes the circumstance of the person that you're working with. And so it's the realm of imagery and poetry, ritual, ceremony, sacred beliefs and practices, and so on. And then, of course, this last area is energetic. And this is where, and many of you who've explored other healing, like energetic healing practices, are familiar with terms like ki, which is the Japanese term for life force, or chi is the Chinese equivalent of it, for those who may do qigong or tai chi, or Chinese medicine, working with the meridians and the elements and so on. There's also the term kaosai, which is the Quechua term for life force energy. And so the Karo shamans believe that if you change things at the energetic level, it will slow down vibrationally and eventually become physical. So they think that if you change things at the life force level, it will eventually change the thoughts and change the words, change the feelings, change the actions, change the results in the world. And so they do a lot with consciousness and energy. This also, I think, is the realm of, you know, for those of you familiar with quantum physics, quantum energy, the quantum field of all possibilities. And so they like to, what they call, dream the world into being. And this is the realm of the East, that realm of the eagle and the condor, where they like that idea of being able to see the big picture of things, like an eagle would flying high in the sky. That you see the landscape, you can see how everything's interconnected. And then you can see how your actions will affect that system, and you can make changes that are ecological for the whole system. So it's a pretty cool map of the territory. And of course, if you look at the combinations of like the study of consciousness and science in the realm of physics, science and sociology and psychology, if you study that in the realm of people, you get anthropology. Philosophy is kind of, to me, a bridge between psychology, sociology, spirituality, and religion. They all kind of share that domain of trying to figure out what this crazy life is all about and how do you dance well with it. And then the realm of mysticism is that arena of the great mystery, where we really don't know what is going on out there. We have our best guesses and working theories, maps and models, and so on, but there's still so much we don't know, and so much that we can explore and that we're evolving into. So there's a lot of very interesting ways of taking different perspectives on the world. So I'd like to, with kind of given that little background, take you through a quick little exercise in symbolic engagement. So this would be an exercise that you can do with clients. You can do it with, I think this one works particularly well with kids to complement what Kat shared with us, particularly teenagers. I worked a lot with teenagers over the years, and this is a fun little exercise. And you can do this. I've actually done this with executive teams and things like that as well. So it's a very, very flexible exercise. So the first thing we're going to do, I'm going to invite you to do, is to just quickly, just in your room where you're at there, is select 4 objects that call to you. And what I mean by that is that it pops out in your attention, like something that grabs your attention. And just pick 4 objects and remember the order in which you select them. And they don't necessarily, you don't have to necessarily grab them and bring them, but just take mental note or write them down. So I'll just pause for a moment while you select your 4 objects. And if you happen to be in a room where you don't have many objects, you can just think of 4 objects. All right. So I'm going to assume that you've all found 4 objects to play with. And so what we're going to do here is it's a little bit of it's a symbolic engagement in how one thing can represent another. Just like we're all very familiar in hypnotherapy with using metaphors, analogies, similes, things like that as a way of inviting unconscious processing. So what I'm going to invite you to do here in a moment is to make an association between the object that you selected and an area of your life. So the first object symbolizes where you've been. So for example, for me, I selected this fan as my first object. So this is a fan that I picked up in Japan in 2019. I went back for a nifty trip to the International Gathering of Shaman in Japan and picked up this fan. And so how this symbolizes where I've been is that I've had a big background in martial arts, studied for about 26 years. I was a teacher for a number of years, and both Zen and Buddhism, Taoism became a very integral part of my spirituality. And so this fan really accurately represents where I've been in terms of my studies of the martial arts and my early awakening into spirituality. After having been raised, I think I might have mentioned before, I was raised in Salt Lake City, Utah. And so half my family were Mormons and the other half were Jehovah's Witnesses. And so you can imagine the fun that was. So I was raised more on the Jehovah's Witness side of the family. And that's where kind of my fears tied in Kat's exercise of fear of being not accepted or standing out or something like that. Because being a Jehovah's Witness in a Mormon community, you definitely are not in. So that became an interesting experience for me. The next object symbolizes where you are now. And so interestingly, I literally have a jar of artificial now in my office here. And so it's a great container of the present moment. And so where I am right now is right now. This is exactly where I am. I'm right here with you in the present moment, and I've got my jar of now. So I think I'm going to have a little helping of this and drink in the moment. The next object is where you're going. And so this represents, it could be a goal or where you think you're headed in your life. And the object I chose for myself is I picked up this wonderful set of critical thinking cards. And so, you know, a lot of people work with tarot cards and other kinds of card decks. And I like working with card decks like this sometimes, where it's like, I want to learn about critical thinking, and I want to be able to teach people about how to be a better critical thinker. That's kind of where I'm going. And in fact, later this year, I plan on teaching a course on how to be a better thinker and getting into critical thinking skills, systemic thinking skills, problem solving skills, creativity and innovation. In fact, I also have a deck of critical or creativity cards. So that's where I'm headed. And then the last object is how am I going to get there? So the object I chose for that is this sphere. It's a stone. It's a septarian stone. And septarian, if you're familiar with this stone, is often thought of as the mind. It supports mental functioning. It supports good thinking. And so I think of this as my NLP and hypnotherapy stone. And I have it right here, right under my monitor, so that I'm in a good space when I'm in session with clients or teaching a class, that I'm thinking well myself. So how I'm going to get there is by being a good thinker myself. Then I can teach people how to do it and do it well. At least that's my goal. I'm not always there. I have my moments where I have crappy thoughts and things like that from time to time. But these are the medicine. This is the stuff that we can use to improve. So I would just invite you for a moment, and we might have some time at the end of my presentation to talk about what you picked and how it symbolizes where you've been, where you are now, where you're going, and how you're going to get there. But as an exercise to take and use this with your clients, you can use this as part of your pre-talk, your initial consultation with a client, to invite them to do this exercise. Now, it doesn't have to be 3 objects, or it doesn't have to be 4 objects. It could be 4 books or 4 songs or 4 paintings. It could be 4 areas of the world. It doesn't really matter what it is, because you're inviting them just to make unconscious isomorphic connections between this and that. And that involves accessing the unconscious mind to make that connection. So it's a nice little process. It's also, again, like I say, great for kids rather than, you know, diving into their trauma or whatever right off the bat. You can kind of prepare the soil for planting seeds and so on by doing a little exercise like this. Another fun variation of this kind of exercise is sometimes I'll have people write down 3 animals that really appeal to them. So just think of 3 animals that really appeal to you, and then I'd have them write down the 3 qualities of each animal that really appeal to them. And the first animal, so once they have that written down, then I'll tell them the first animal represents what you think other people think of you. Now that's an interesting exploration all by itself. How do you think other people think of you? And so getting into that exploration, the second animal represents how you want other people to think of you. The third animal represents how you really are. And so often when I do this exercise, especially with teenagers, I will often then ask an additional question of, if there's a difference between how you really are and how you want people to think of you, why is there a difference? Why would you want people to perceive you differently than you really are? And then it invites an exploration into the power and the benefit of being authentic, of being genuine, being real, so that what you see is what you get. And that you can be your true authentic self in the presence of other people, and to do it fearlessly. That you can be boldly, fearlessly, unapologetically yourself. And there's no need to hide or no need to, put up a mask or a false front. So it's another very interesting way of exploring how to work with people. And this is a symbolic engagement exercise, which is part of the work of the West in shamanic practice. And so that's why I can kind of blend the hypnotherapy side with the shamanic engagement. So these 2 models are ones that I often use to describe the structural similarities, the way we think of consciousness in hypnotherapy as opposed to shamanism. So this model here on the right side is a model I created to try to describe to not only clients but to my students how this is my map of how consciousness works. So this center, this intersection of the diagram is the present moment. So that's right here, right now, what you're immediately paying attention to. As you go up on this diagram, you're becoming more conscious, more aware, more fully awake. As you go down on this model, you're becoming more unconscious. So you're going into, you go into these layers of trance, depth of trance, until eventually you go into full unconsciousness or sleep, where everything is just happening automatically. Whereas at the other end of the scale, it's much more, you're very conscious, very intentional, very deliberate, very aware of what you're doing while you're doing it in the present moment. This horizontal axis represents time. So going into the past through memory, going into the future through imagination. And this little squiggle here is our ongoing thoughts. And you'll notice that some of the thoughts are above the line, which means that they're more intentional, more conscious and deliberate. And some of them are below the line. They're more unconscious and automatic. And if you look at your own experience, just in your day-to-day conscious awareness, depending on who you read, what sources you reference, some sources estimate that we're in a trance 40 seconds out of every minute of the day. 40 seconds out of every minute of the day, we're either back here, we might be down here somewhere, but occasionally we pop out here into conscious, intentional, deliberate, conscious functioning. This little sphere, this little circle here is where we're using our mind as a tool. So for example, I might guide a person back intentionally to access resource states, remembering a time when you were confident, for example. And so you can go back into the past and access resources, times when you were confident, times when you were calm, times when you were cheerful, or where you handled things well. I might take them into the future and have them imagine a time when they've healed or they've achieved their goal or their outcome. What is it that they want to have happen, so that they're future pacing, manifesting, planning what it is that they want to have happen. If you go farther up here, you get into realms of meditation, and then up into this green zone, which is the pure consciousness that holds all of it. So you could think of that as just pure conscious awareness that's different from the functions of the mind, the thinking functions of the mind. The thinking functions of the mind happen within the space of consciousness. And so this is the model that I use to describe consciousness from a hypnotherapy and NLP perspective. This model is the way the Karo shamans view the world. So again, they divide the world into if you think of the external world versus the internal world, which also on the consciousness side, there's attention outward and attention inward. So sometimes we're paying attention to the external world, sometimes we're inside doing something. And in shamanism, it's the same thing, the outer awareness and the inner awareness. The outer world, they divide into the upper world, which is the realm of the sky, the realm of the heavens, the realm of spirit. The middle world is the realm of, is kind of like the surface of the earth where life happens. And that's where we do our day-to-day stuff. You know, we go shopping, we go to school, we go to work, we do our thing. And then the lower world, the earth below is Mother Earth, or what they refer to as Pachamama. And they see the earth as a living entity, that she is our great mother. And so in the external world, they have the upper, middle, and lower world. When you're inside, they also think of the inner world as having an upper, middle, and a lower world. So the upper world is, you could think of as the realm of kind of the superconscious mind. And this is the realm of inspiration, intuition, higher consciousness, tapping into the quantum realm, the unmanifest potential of all creation. And so that's the upper world of the inner world. And the middle world is the conscious mind. This is where we're consciously engaged with whatever's on the screen of our attention. And that could be inside or outside, of course, but it's on the screen of our awareness. And then the lower world is in the inner world is the realm of the past. So you could think of that as the realm of the subconscious mind or the unconscious mind. Sometimes we use those terms interchangeably. I like to think of the unconscious as anything outside of conscious awareness, whereas the term subconscious to me refers more to the function of our central nervous system, our brain and our neurology. So this is, so you can kind of see there's some parallels between the way we think of consciousness in hypnotherapy and in shamanism. So a few other parallels between shamanism and hypnotherapy that I think hopefully you will find as fascinating as I do. So in hypnotherapy, we work with altered states of consciousness. And so we think of, we invite people into a relaxed and receptive state of mind, and all the different trance depths and the different things that we can do and access in the various trance depths, from waking hypnosis, waking suggestion, hypnoidal, somnambule, the Estale state, all of those wonderful trance states that we work with is altering the consciousness so that we can have access to resources that we may not have access to otherwise. We also work, so the shamanic equivalent of that is shamanic journeying. And so many of you may have experienced shamanic journeys where you've journeyed to find your power animal, for example, or you might have journeyed into the lower world for a shamanic soul retrieval journey, or into the upper world for a destiny retrieval journey. But there's lots of different shamanic journeys that we take where we go in and and try to access again a kind of medicine. And a medicine is anything that helps us think, feel, or act better in some way. It's something that helps heal, something that helps transform, something that helps enlighten, or helps us to create what it is that we want to create. In hypnotherapy, of course, the other big thing we work with is the power of suggestion. And so we're very well acquainted with the power of suggestion and how we use language and how to use language very precisely and even artistically to be able to facilitate change in people and to help them accept the ideas and the beliefs that's going to support the way they want to be in the world in terms of who they want to be and how they want to live. And of course, there's both direct and indirect suggestion. So direct suggestion usually points more to the actual words that we use, the language, and directly telling people how to think, feel, or act. Whereas indirect suggestion is more in the nonverbal expressions of our suggestions, but also it's also the realm of indirect language, like the use of metaphor, presuppositions, implication, that kind of thing, of course. The shamanic equivalent of this is there's a practice in Karo shamanism, which is called rime, which means to speak with power. And that means to speak authentically, effectively, and benevolently. So in other words, we use our words to benefit, not only ourselves, but other people. And some of you may have read or heard of the book, The Four Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz. And that comes more from the Toltec tradition, which I've trained a bit with and have read extensively. I think I've read all of the Ruiz's books and all of his son's books. Got to meet his son up in Portland at a presentation a few years ago, which was, it was really nice to meet and chat with him for a while. But this idea, one of the four agreements is to be impeccable with your word, which means to use your word to benefit. So what people will say things like, oh, I'm sorry, that was my bad. You know, just a little phrase like that is one that Miguel Ruiz points as a kind of sorcery, a kind of self-sorcery. It's a way of talking yourself into limitation or into negative thinking or something like that, especially when it is taken to the identity level. Like I'm just not I'm not really good at math, or I'm, not good at remembering names. And so now those beliefs get installed and go with us wherever we go. So we get really present to how are we using our language, our communication, and are we using it in beneficial ways or detrimental ways? And then lastly, there's some therapeutic processes, for example, like age regression, which is a common technique we use in hypnotherapy to guide a person back into the past to be able to perhaps relive a traumatic experience, but relive it from new eyes, from an adult perspective, so that they're able to reassess and reinterpret that experience and maybe come away with a different set of beliefs about themselves as a person or their capabilities or something along those lines. So age regression is a very useful and flexible way of helping people change their relationship to past experiences. The shamanic equivalent to that is a process called soul retrieval. And in soul retrieval, what we do is we will go on a shamanic journey. Sometimes we journey on behalf of the client. Sometimes we journey with the client, where we journey into the underworld, into that unconscious arena where the past lives, and invite them. And this is much more of a symbolic, mythic journey. And so we might guide them to a place in nature where there's a hole in the ground or a hole in the tree where they can travel down into the underworld. And we meet the gatekeeper of the underworld, which is a character called Huáscar Inca. And we ask Huáscar Inca to guide us into the realms of the underworld and into the four chambers of the soul. The first chamber in a shamanic soul retrieval is the chamber of wounds. And this is where we explore the person's initial wounding, very similar to an age regression, where we would go back to a traumatic experience and have them witness it as if it were a play happening on a stage, so that they can revisit that original wounding. And then we go from that chamber and travel to another chamber called the Chamber of Agreements, or the Chamber of Contracts. And that's where we explore what agreements or what ideas the person adopted because of that experience. And they will they have the opportunity to look at those beliefs, those agreements, and decide if they want to change them, update them, get rid of them. And so there's different symbolic ways of doing that, like having it written on paper, and they might burn it in a little ceremony as in their journey, or they might rip it up, or they might just throw it up in the air and it turns into smoke and evaporates. There's lots of nifty imagery that you can do with that part of the process. Then we travel on to the third chamber, which is the Chamber of Grace. And this is where we help a person access their original nature, like that childhood innocence that we often lose because of traumatic experiences, where we become armored, we become protected, we defend and protect ourselves from, people's judgments or mistreatment or things like that. And buried underneath those layers is that childhood, the childlike innocence that we all came into the world with, where we're open to experience. And like Kat so masterfully invited us to get in touch with our childlike nature. And that's different from being childish. There's a difference between childish and childlike. So we sometimes use the word childish to describe somebody who lacks maturity and is misbehaving in some way. Whereas childlike is more like that sense of wonder and delight and playfulness and just the willingness and openness to learn, because we haven't quite figured the world out yet. So we're in a learning beginner's mind. And that's the Chamber of Grace. And that's usually where we find the soul part that withdrew into the underworld to protect themselves from traumatic experiences. And we invite that soul part to come back with us, and then go into and bring them back out of the underworld into the middle world, and then integrate that part again. The last chamber that we explore in a soul retrieval is the Chamber of Treasures. And this is where I would guide a client to look for a shamanic medicine object, something that will be helpful to them. And again, it's an object kind of like, it could be, like the fan or something like that, that they find in the underworld that becomes then a symbolic resource for them to, one, how to integrate this soul part, but also how to give it expression. Like, how are we going to allow it to live again in their life and have its expression, its honor, its respect as an integral part of that person and their overall totality. So it's age regression and soul retrieval are very, very similar processes. It's just that age regression, as at least the way I learned it in hypnotherapy, is a little more literal and symbolic, whereas soul retrieval is more symbolic and mythic. Deep trance identification is another phenomena that we engage in hypnotherapy. Sometimes it happens unconsciously as children, where we might identify with our parents in some way. We become them essentially. I don't know, for some of you who have a little more gray hair on your head, may have noticed, I've noticed that I'm becoming a lot like my dad as I get older. It's showing up in surprising ways. And that's a little bit of evidence for where I may have identified with my father, where I modeled him. But it can be also in resourceful ways and in limiting ways. So deep trance identification is also, when we use it on purpose in hypnotherapy, to be able to access a different perspective, a different way of looking at things, or a different way of being. And so it's a kind of modeling from an NLP perspective, like you become somebody else, like literally in your mind, float out of yourself and float into them and look out their eyes, become them, like feel what it feels like to be in their body. take on their beliefs, take on their perspective, their mannerisms, their gender, their size, their shape. Literally become them as much as you can in your imagination, and then notice how differently the world looks from their perspective, or how whatever their issue is, their goal, their outcome, their problem, their issue, whatever it is, how does it look differently through another person's perspective? And in my early days of NLP, when I was learning, the people that I wanted to model, like the first person I modeled was James Bond. James Bond was a hero to me. I wanted to be more like James Bond. So I thought, how would James Bond handle this situation? And so I would deep trance identify with James Bond, and I would get into that state of savoir-faire that I could handle anything. And not only handle it, but handle it masterfully, and usually with some nifty gadget as well. So James Bond was one that I identified with. And then there was Gandalf from Lord of the Rings. I wanted to be like Gandalf and have my staff and being able to summon the powers of the universe to be able to do, you know, either for protection or whatever I was going to do. And so I would shapeshift into Gandalf and go, okay, so how would Gandalf look at this situation? And of course, I did it not quite as, where I would do it more with like people I knew, mentors, teachers, people that I admired and respected, to be able to see things from their point of view and gather that wisdom. In shamanism, we have a similar process called shapeshifting. Shamanic shapeshifting in the legend and lore is that shamans could literally transform themselves into animals, and that they could transform themselves, for example, into an eagle, take off and fly, and then look at the world from an eagle's perspective. And like I mentioned earlier, they could see the greater landscape, and yet they had super sharp focus, like an eagle, that they could see a mouse running through the meadow from, you know, hundreds of feet in the air, and then be able to swoop down and snatch it for a snack. And so to be able to shapeshift into other animals and look at things from their perspective, or even elements of nature. Like sometimes I like to become a stone and become grounded. So I'm solid, grounded, stable, not easily moved, not easily blown around. And I like to have that inner stability that in the martial arts, we call it fudoshin, which means immovable mind. It's like, go ahead and try to disturb me. Can't do it. It's not up to you. It's up to me. It's not up to the weather. It's not up to traffic. It's not up to other people's opinions or beliefs or anything. I have that inner stability that's mine. I choose it. I decide it. I'm as solid as a rock. And yet I can also embody the fluidity of water. So I can have inner stability with outer flexibility. So I can flow and dance and change with whatever's showing up in the moment, and yet I still have my inner stability. And so to be able to shapeshift into other ways of being, other ways of thinking, other ways of looking at things. And in my experience, the thing that prevents people more than anything to be able to do that is when they think they have the truth with the capital T. When they think they have the truth with the capital T, they're stuck. Now they can't shapeshift anymore. They can't look at things from other perspectives without judging it as being wrong or bad or incorrect or fake news or whatever it is. You know, they're too busy fussing about whether it's true or not, and they're not looking at whether or not it's useful to look at things from that perspective. I'm much more present to whether it's useful or helpful to look at things from a certain perspective rather than whether it's true or not. Because we could argue philosophically all day long whether something is true or not and get into, yes, it is, no, it isn't, yes, it is, no, it isn't. And that's usually not helpful. But if I go, oh, if I look at it this way, I feel differently. Or I might access a different resource, or I might access a different kind of medicine. And whether it's true or not is irrelevant. If it changes my state, if it gives me a resource that's helpful, I'm on it. So that's, again, and you may have a whole different map of the territory, and that's totally cool. But these are, again, some ways that I like to work with both of these models. So now, just as a way of kind of bringing this all together, one of the things that I'm currently working on is I use shamanism as a base. And so this diagram, the horizontal plane and this diagonal plane represent the 4 directions. So this would be south, west, north, and east. Evolve and enrich in the south, empower and engage in the west, enlighten and educate in the north, envision and express in the east. The vertical line here is earth and sky. So to embody embrace is to find right relationship with our physical nature, and to expand, elevate and expand is to find right relationship with our non-physical nature, our spiritual or energetic nature. And so I'm putting together a model. I'm writing a book on this, and I'm calling it the Mandorla method. And the term mandorla is a weird word. It's actually the Italian word for almond. And so you see this almond shape, you know, where the 2 circles overlap. That's what a mandorla is. It's the blend of things. It's how you blend different ideas, perspectives, methodologies, that kind of thing. And so my model is that if we embody and embrace our physical nature, we become healthy. And all of the different ways that we can become healthy physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, energetically, in all our relations. If we are in right relationship with our past, then we become mature. We become mature adult human beings because we've learned and integrated from our past experiences. In the West, we've become successful because we've become empowered. We're not victims anymore. We're empowered, we're responsible and accountable, we can think and do for ourselves, and we can engage people very intentionally, and we can be successful. And not only with people, but circumstances and conditions. If we are in right relationship with our spiritual nature, we become awakened. We know who we are, we know why we're here, and we have a pretty good sense for what's going on. If we do our work in the north well, we come in right relationship with our mind and consciousness, then we become wise. And then in the east, if we're in right relationship with our future, we become fulfilled. We can envision and express who we're becoming instead of who we have been. We become informed by our destiny rather than our history. And so then we come back to the center where we can experience and enjoy life. And this is right relationship with the present moment. And so when you're in right relationship with the here and now, which is really all there is, then you can experience and enjoy life from moment to moment. And that means to show up and be present to what you're doing, to be conscious, intentional, deliberate. We're here now. We're not off in a trance somewhere else. And what I've done with this model is I looked at all the different methodologies, and I've integrated maybe 8 or 9 different methods from shamanism, hypnotherapy, NLP, various coaching models, acceptance and commitment therapy, cognitive behavior therapy, martial arts, and some of the, the more woo-woo stuff like Shinkiko, Reiki, Tui Na, energy work, all of those different things. I looked at them and I thought, so what is the purpose of that methodology? What's its potential? What are the principles of that model? What are the practices of that model? What are the change work processes that model brings? What are the perspectives? Like how does hypnotherapy look at it than say shamanism looks at it? What different perspectives do they offer on reality? And then how does it improve our performance? And so what my model is going to do is it's intended for practitioners like yourself who've studied different arenas. You have, most of you that I know have multiple methodologies that you've trained in, you've studied in, that you practice, and you blend it in your own way. So what I want to offer is a model that will help people create their own unique blend of these different magnificent change work methodologies. So my book is in process. I hope to have it done and out this year, and I'll certainly let you know so that you can utilize it to create your own unique blend. So this is another quick representation of my model. And the primary purpose, and this is literally my purpose, my reason for being in this life is to help people find right relationship with themselves and the world. And for me, again, right relationship means being healthy, harmonious, reciprocal, it's mutually beneficial, and supports ideal functioning. And so that involves, you know, right relationship with our past, right relationship with other people, conditions and circumstances, right relationship with our own mind and consciousness, right relationship with our future, right relationship with our physical nature, right relationship with our spiritual nature, and then lastly, right relationship with the present moment. So you can imagine what it would be like to be a mature, successful, wise, fulfilled, healthy, aware human being enjoying life. And that kind of appeals to me. You know, I think that'd probably be a pretty way to rock and roll. So that's kind of what I'm working on, how I'm putting all this together. And so there's lots, again, this is a very flexible model that you can use in lots of different ways, and make your own blend using, you know, what different pathways. I think of each of these as a kind of path. Like the way we teach in shamanism, the South is the path of the healer. That's where we get right relationship with our past, is through our healing work. In the West, it's the path of the luminous warrior who has no enemies in this world or the next. We move out of relationships of opposition into relationships of harmony so that we can be successful. And then, you know, of course, going around, or in the North, it's right relationship with who we really are and how to step outside of time. It's the path of transcendence and enlightenment. The hummingbird, by the way, I've neglected to mention, is the archetype of the North, which is really have that stillness in flight and to drink from the sweet nectar of life. And to me, that's like really being present in the present moment and engaging fully in what we're doing. And even though we might be flapping our wings 1,000 miles a minute, rapidly moving from one experience to the next, we can still have that stillness in flight, the way a hummingbird can hover in space, in the air, for a moment between moving from one flower to the next. And then in the East is the path of the visionary, the path of the creator, the manifester, so that we can dream the world into being, so that we're using our imagination to create what we want to experience, not just try to predict what we think is going to happen. So we use our imagination as an act of creation. And so it's really a nice integrated framework that I use for not only for my own personal evolution and my own path forward, but this is kind of my coaching model that I use to blend all of the different things that I've learned into an integrated, coordinated way of working with people. So this last piece I want to leave you with is a shamanic practice that I put together. It's inspired from a number of different sources, but I like to think of it as the art of sacred practicality. So the sacred has to do with connecting with our spirituality, our soul, our destiny, our purpose and potential. And yet we're these spiritual beings here to have a human experience. So the human experience also involves the practical world of, you know, we got to clean the house and do the dishes and pay our bills and deal with family matters and go to work, go to school, pay, you know, all of those different things. How do we do all of the practical things of life and do it successfully? So these are a set of affirmations that I do daily. They're also obviously suggestions. So I go on my long walks. I think of them as medicine walks, where I walk 5 to 6 miles a day, about 5 days a week. And these are the things that I tell myself when I go out on my walk. So my daily affairs are the sacred ceremonies I perform in the temple of my life. So I'm never not at church. I'm always in sacred ceremony with every interaction that I have with people. Everything loved exactly as it is, and thus it is altered, A-L-T-A-R-E-D, and made sacred. So it's a fascinating thing that when you let things be exactly as they are, they transform naturally. And so I've learned the power of just accepting people as they are, honoring them as they are, really even appreciating the way they are. And it's amazing how people will transform just because they're being appreciated for exactly who and how they are. How your relationship to something changes when you just let it be the way it is and not get all bent out of shape because it's not the way you want. So it's really a profound practice, that one all by itself. Every act of ceremony done with full presence, full care, and full respect for the purpose it serves. And this to me is like all of the Japanese arts of like Japanese calligraphy and flower arranging, meditation, all of those different things. It's about mindfulness. It's about presence, the quality of your engagement with something in the moment. And of course, that is even more profound when you're working with somebody and you're in session with somebody and you have them in an altered state of consciousness, to be able to do that ceremonially, like you're doing it full presence, full care, full respect for the purpose it serves. The next one, every movement masterfully performed. This one connects partly to the martial arts for me, but I even do it like when I'm doing the dishes and I'm carefully rinsing the dish and putting it in the dishwasher, that I'm doing every movement efficiently and effectively, sometimes even with a little bit of style or a little bit of flair, just to add a little fun to the mix. And here's the one for being impeccable with our word. Every word is a beneficial prayer, blessing, intention, suggestion, or useful expression, so that I can practice using my communication very powerfully and effectively. Every walk is a medicine walk for me, so I'm using it to access medicine or to benefit in some way. So I often go down to the riverfront park and I like when the fires were happening, I pray to the water to bring water to help douse the fires. When it's raining too much, then I call in the sun to dry things up a bit. Just trying to bring harmony and balance to my community. Treating every place as a shrine. Every place is a sacred place, potentially. And then the last one, which is my favorite, is every intention naturally and effortlessly fulfilled. So I always get what I want. And that I really enjoy, I really like. So whatever my intentions are, I can naturally and effortlessly fulfill them. Now, it's not always instantaneous fulfillment. Sometimes it's a process that goes over a long period of time, but that's my intention. Oh man, I ran out of slides. So there was a really quick run through. I'm about 8 minutes over, I think, here, but hopefully that gives you a taste for how I blend not only shamanism with hypnotherapy, but also blending all the other different methodologies that I've gathered over the years, and how to coordinate them together into kind of a central model that works for me. And hopefully that gives you some ideas for how you can do it for you and how you work with people. So I'm gonna turn it back now to Joni for whatever we have next.
Okay. Thank you so much, Larry. That was so interesting.
Thank you, Larry.
Make sure I'm unmuted here. Okay. I really enjoyed that. That was very interesting, the way that you are putting all of those together. And I am looking forward to seeing that book, to actually getting to read that book that you're going to be putting out. So great. Thank you. I think the last thing that we had for today, I know that it's a little after 4. I just want to bring you up to date real quick on the legislation, and then we can either take a break and come back if people have questions. You can feel free to leave, whatever works for you. I do just want to make it very quick, though, for the legislation stuff, is that we have that legislation that we were concerned about for right now has been stalled, and we are watching it very carefully to make sure that it doesn't go forward. It certainly might. There's a very good chance that it will come up again later in the session. Right now, everybody is busy working on things like COVID and wildfires and people experiencing major depression and suicide and those kinds of things. So right now, legislator is really busy with that. But we are watching. We also have a legislative concept, which is what you get before you get a bill. And we're looking for somebody either in the House or the Senate that would be really interested and willing to take our concept and make it into a bill and present it. And it doesn't matter whether it goes to the House or the Senate first. It has to go to both anyway. So if you have a relationship with somebody and you think that they would be a very good representative for us, then I would love to hear about that. So maybe we can get that moving forward. Our difficulties right now is nobody really cares. There's not a problem that we're trying to solve. We don't have a lot of money that we're giving. And so they're like, why do I care? I've got these other things that are going on. But we do have it in our back pocket. So if things come up, if something happens and all of a sudden somebody does care, we can say, you know what, instead of doing this, how about this one instead? If you want more information about that legislative concept, please let me know. I'm more than happy to share that with you. And I think that's it. Does anybody have any questions or anything else that they would like to share before we say goodbye?
An invitation to June 26th.
Oh, yes.
Y'all come back. We haven't decided yet whether we're going to do it live or online. Maybe we'll get everybody vaccinated and taken care of, and we can all meet live. Wouldn't that be wonderful?
Yeah. And we're also looking at recording. The board has been talking for years about recording, and then we hit the whole COVID thing, and now we're all sort of used to recording. So we're talking about trying to figure out how to record these so that people all over the state will be able to access our meetings, which would be really nice to be able to bring it to more people.
Yeah. So this presentation was recorded?
It was, yes.
Wonderful. Wonderful. I can't wait to watch it again. Seriously, that's phenomenal. Thank you guys so much.
Yeah, it was great. I'm very excited about being able to do this.
It was awesome. I think they both did a tremendous job. Awesome.
Yes, so much to take into our practices. And it makes me excited about working with kids, Kat. I don't normally work with kids, but it's like, oh, maybe I'll get to play with puppets.
Well, there's a kid inside of all of us, so there you have it.
Yeah.
And listening to Larry, blending the two is very exciting. That'd be really I've been thinking about that myself. So it was very interesting hearing how he did that and got me thinking, which is great.
Yeah.
I loved your presentation, Larry. It's so interesting. Albert Einstein said, you can't use an old map to explore a new world. And I love the concept of you have a little creature who is the Huascar Inca, he's the guide to the underworld. And it's another way of exploring the map. I loved your explanation. I loved everything about it. Are you going to be sharing any of those any slides with the group?
Yes, I will. I need to convert it to a PDF document, and then I'll send it. Maybe to Joseph could send it out to the group.
Okay.
I can post it on the website with all the other documents.
Perfect.
Great, thank you.
And you just finished teaching a shamanic course. When is your next one?
Well, that remains to be seen. I'm still kind of like everybody. I'm dancing to see how the COVID thing's going to roll and all of that. But I will start another program probably in the fall. But I haven't decided if it's going to be shamanism, NLP, or hypnotherapy, or some. I might do. I'm toying with the idea of a 7-month program and do the entire Mandorla method. So it would be like one of the 7 paths each month. So I'm percolating on that one too.
It definitely felt like we got the zip file version, the compressed version today. So that's great. Yeah, if you could expand it out, yeah, for years, that will be much easier to digest.
Yeah.
If I could take a moment.
I was just going to say it was great to see everybody and how everyone has, you know, their own energy that they're putting into it. I'm watching Larry and I'm excited about everything he's having to, you know, he's presenting, and I'm thinking, wow, I'm putting my excitement into his presentation. I wonder how it's working in everybody else, because we're all going to be a mix of something new when we close our Zoom window today and we walk off into the world.
We've been shape-shifted.
Well, there's one thing is that if you want what is, you'll always get what you want. Just saying.
Yeah. I like that.
Yeah, I do too.
Thanks, Larry. Thanks for the reminder.
You're welcome. It is kind of interesting when you want what happens, and what happens is what you want. It's all good. Right relationship with the present moment.
Yep. Well, that jaguar behind you is watching you all the time. So
yeah.
That's one of my early shamanic fears, is being eaten by a jaguar. But Kat cured me of that, so we're buddies now.
Very good.
So thank you. I'd like to say thank you to Kat for bringing the playfulness to, you know, like bringing that home about playfulness and reminding me about that with everything that I do. I should be bringing that playfulness, not just love. I already bring love, but playfulness. So reminding me, and lots of cool tools that I can use. I will be following up for your story about Maury. And thank you, Larry, for your, I love what you do with models always. And I like models too. They give different perspectives. They let us walk the terrain differently. So thank you. Thank you, Larry, for your presentation. And I'm looking forward to your book as well.
Thanks for everybody that presented today. It was an excellent day.
Oh, the obligatory kid in the background. That's great.
Hey, hi.
Oh, too much attention.
No, but that's good. That's the thing to do. She wants attention. There she goes.
Hi.
Yay!
Cool.
All right then. Did you want to say anything else, Scott?
I did. I just wanted to take a shout out to everyone. Thank you for being here. Couldn't happen without you being here, holding it together during the pandemic. Definitely looking forward to us all meeting in person. I also wanted to give a shout out to our main man, Joseph, who has been holding this thing together for so long, and not only part of the root system, but definitely part of the system that we look at and we admire, and we're so thankful that you are, you know, you are who you are and what you give to our organization. So thanks. I love the updated cover and the new cover that you sent out for testing. Thank you, man. You're the guy. You're the guy. And
Really like your Zoom background, Larry. That's really cool. The green screen works really well.
Thanks.
Well, and I'd like to also just thank everybody who pulled this together to make this happen. Having this, you know, for me, it would always be this wonderful pilgrimage to drive up to Lake Oswego to connect with all of you and, you know, heart connect, intention connect, presentness, people who are on the path, living the way I want to live, which is being present and hearing people and coming from a place of love for everybody and for healing. And, you know, I'll say the God, goddess, you know, within everybody. And I just, to have that in this time of, you know, not being able to go hug my friends, it's really made a huge difference for me. So thank you. Thank you for making it happen.
You're welcome. That's for sure.
And thanks, Joseph. Thanks, Joni. Thanks, Larry. Thanks, everybody, for being good listeners, because if there weren't listeners, there wouldn't be speakers. And we certainly, I don't know how it was for Larry. I put together 4 presentations this week, and I didn't think I'd live, but I did. And it's because you're there, and it just tells us an awful lot about how you're all batteries for those of us who speak. So I don't know how the speakers are going for the next meeting, but you know, the thing about giving a presentation is once you give the presentation to people, you feel this influx of energy, and who knows where we're all going to go after this. You know, just because you close the windows does not mean that you stopped running. So thank you very much for being there and giving me the opportunity to share what I have to share. I love seeing my graduates here. I love seeing people I haven't seen. I also love seeing people who I haven't seen for a long time. So the whole Zoom format to me has been really brilliant. I'm very grateful for it. So thank you. Thank you, everybody, for being there.
Thank you, Kat.
Yeah. Thanks, everybody. We will see you all in June. Thank you for being here. Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Bye, everyone.
Bye.